Hey everyone, this is Jeremy from Thoughts and Players. I had wrote and kind of planned on creating this review before the whole hashtag NFL drop EA thing kind of erupted. Let them know about our disagreements, our frustration with this game and with this company and how they created. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there beforehand because, excuse me, I actually don't really touch on any of that in this review. Again, it was wrote and recorded before all that, but just wanted to put a little precursor there. Video doesn't really have a, intro either besides this. I just kind of jump into talking about the game because I wanted to get the suffering over with as quick as possible. So with that being said, enjoy. So first, let's talk about some of the gameplay improvements they've made before we point out the things that weren't improved, which are most. So one of the gameplay features that were added this year is the new pass rush moves. They've returned the pass rush controls to the right thumbstick, like in past games. If you've ever played NCAA football 13 or 14, the basic idea behind this is familiar. I like those games, and like those games, it does make the pass rushing moves more engaging. You're essentially playing a mini game within the game, and it makes controlling your defensive tackle or defensive end much more appealing to just using a linebacker or a safety. They provide feedback on whether your move is successful or not, and though it's a bit gaudy in my opinion, it does get the job done. So overall, good job here, Madden. See, I could be nice. Another change that has been made is that your quarterback can actually throw out of tackles now. This means that if your quarterback is throwing the ball right when they get hit, the ball will still be released with varying degrees of accuracy. I experienced this in my Lions franchise playthrough with Matt Stafford. Yes, I am a Lions fan and I have problems. Anyway, I was able to actually throw a really nice pass to TJ Hawkinson, and the entire process actually felt good. It's a shame it took till Madden 21 for them to do something to somewhat capture what's been going on in the NFL for at least the last 30 years, but they got there. So there you go.
And he's got it. To throw on 2nd and 6. Stafford. Right side, it's the tight end, Hawkinson. And he'll be out of bounds.
I'll end with a couple of small pluses as far as gameplay improvements. The first being that they have added a bit more control in regards to passing precision. You can use a combination of buttons in order to throw the ball low or high up for a fade route. Fade routes still don't really work. There are still some animations and player logic problems from that standpoint, but at least there was some kind of effort to make it viable. And to go along with that, they've made it quicker for your player to turn upfield after they've caught the ball on the run from like a slant route, for instance. It's still not great or even good, but it's better. This leads us into some gameplay negatives, actually many gameplay negatives, which is why this portion will probably be shorter than the pros portion, I guess. If you want a very in-depth assessment of all the things EA manages to not fix, and in some cases further mess up with their game, I recommend you check out Ryan Moody's channel. I'll provide a link to it in the description. But blocking is still just god-awful. I don't know how you manage to focus on pass rushing while at the same time doing nothing to improve the offensive line play in this game. It seems to get worse every year, and again, it's just terrible. Like in this play, for instance, even though it's successful, I hiked the ball and two of my linemen just stand there for a moment. No one's really hunting for blocks or looking around. Then I have this linebacker that beats my right tackle and comes around the right side. However, I'm saved because my left guard is able to travel from the other side of the play in the most awkward, unrealistic way possible to block the linebacker as I move up. Meanwhile, my center, who is closer to the right side, decides to go in for a double team on a perfectly blocked defender, rather than tracking the outside rusher, making a beeline for my quarterback. It is Madden at its most Madden, which is why this game's Metacritic score, both user and critical or critic, has been on a slide for at least the past 5 years. Reason 2 of this game being successful, or of this play being successful, is that the zone coverage logic is still just messed up. You can see here that as Kenny Golladay has clearly beaten his guy, that the safety continues to keep his hips and feet flat rather than running with the receiver behind him. Everyone else is accounted for. The halfback has a linebacker watching him. Marvin Jones on the left side of the field is double, arguably triple covered. The tight end I have on the right side in the flat, but not really in the flat, is also totally covered. One could argue or try to argue that the safety is trying to play for either the receiver or the tight end, but the safety is already backpedaling. And in most cases, a safety's responsibility is to make sure nothing comes over the top or simply be there if the corner isn't. In this case, he gets caught flat-footed and actually gets in the corner's way of pursuing Golladay. This has been broken in the game for years, literally years, and it still is. And I'm positive it isn't going to be fixed soon, since that will require some actual programming and stuff. Like I said, there are many more issues with gameplay. Check out Ryan's channel. I assure you it would be worth the laughs. Okay, but I've talked about gameplay. But before I go on and talk about game modes, I want to talk a little bit about presentation. The recent Maddens have usually had passable to mediocre presentation. This year, it seems they've tried to liven some things up a bit. There's already the commentary that's been stagnant for years. But this time there's a pregame presentation that's narrated by the most monotone man in the universe. I don't know where they found this person. Mixed in with some canned camera shots of head coaches and players. It's a new thing, even though it uses a lot of old things, so everything kind of offsets here. They've also introduced a lot more in regards to graphic packages. So there's a graphic for first downs, for flags, stuff like that. I don't know if that was needed. Comes off as obnoxious at times. You can also now choose the celebration of your player when they make a huge play, for instance, making a sack. Seems to happen a little too often for plays like that. I think it would be better if it were saved for momentum shifting plays, like an opposing team driving to take the lead, but then your defensive end comes up with a big sack and puts them in a 3rd and long. Then maybe it pops up. And by the way, I think that is part of them selling the quote more control portion of the game, because the celebrations that your players do are ones they've already been doing. You just choose which one to do now. Also, the camera angles. Like, look at this. Like, who thought getting a semi-revolving camera shot of Chase Daniel's ass and taint would be something anyone would want to see? Okay, I'm done here. So let's move on to the game modes, with the first being Classic Franchise. So, in case anyone is unaware, earlier this year, EA released the Madden trailer to thunderous praise and applause, sarcasm, and they followed that up with gridiron notes detailing what could be expected from this year's iteration. The gridiron notes for Classic Franchise were essentially a little more than bullet points from a patch, and thus the hashtag FixMaddenFranchise was born. It took over Twitter for a day. EA responded with corporate dribble before presenting a roadmap of stuff they claim they aim to add to the mode in the coming years, but this isn't a Madden 23 or 24 or 25 review. It's Madden 21. So as far as what I think of franchise mode, I'll present a simple pros and cons assessment. So, the pros. It exists. Now let's move on to the cons. Well, virtually everything is unchanged. So there's still no career stat tracking. There's still no custom contract offers to free agents. Veteran free agents somehow still get counted as rookies, which is a bug copy and pasted from last year. Some of these things are supposed to be added later. Some of them might get patched out. But the fact that they are still here in a game that at release is $60 isn't acceptable. So if you need a football game and you can wait, whenever the hell 2K comes up with, go with it there. However, if you can't wait a whole year, then wait at least until November to entertain the thought of buying this thing. Hopefully, then they'll have some more features patched in, more bugs patched out, and it will cost half as much. This game depreciates in value hella fast. But yeah, that's it for Classic Franchise. Not much there. Let's move on to the franchise mode they really seem to care about. So Long Shot was a decent effort at adding a story-driven career mode to Madden. It wasn't good, but it was a decent attempt. One of the major backlashes to Long Shot was the basic fact that nobody really asked for it. But people entertained and thought, well, they tried. But hopefully they concentrate more on making the core gameplay better. Then they came out with Long Shot Deuce in Madden 19. It was worse in pretty much every regard, and again, it was a worse version of a career mode no one asked for. Well, I guess someone on the Madden team really wants to get into the Writers Guild because now we have Face of the Franchise, one of the most stilted, nonsensical, poorly written stories I've had the misfortune of playing in quite some time. So let me see if I can present the story of Foff, that's what I'm going to call it, as succinctly as possible. So you are in your junior year as the new backup quarterback on the football team. You haven't played football since Pop Warner. Now this brings me to red flag number one. So you can see here, I'm gonna put this screenshot in here, that Pop Warner goes up to age 15 as the oldest. If you're a junior, typically you're like 17. Now your guy talks about Pop Warner like it was a long time ago, so we can safely assume it's been longer than 2 years since he's played football. So, like, why the gap in time? What happened that made him stop playing? And more importantly, what made him want to start playing again? I mean, even in Long Shot, we get some backstory as to why Devin loves the game of football. We have his father and different stuff like that. It helps give his character some dimension, but here, there's nothing. I'll proceed a little bit more quickly with my gripes and general breakdown of this story. Next, you meet the starting quarterback that doesn't like you because plot. Fast forward to after having a bad first half in a game, your character tells Tommy, the quarterback that doesn't like you, that he doesn't have heart. And this kid you just met that doesn't like you proceeds to tell you that he has a congenital heart defect. You're then given the options as to how you want to support him, whether you want to, tell him to sit out or just say you'll keep it quiet. Doesn't matter because literally 15 seconds later, your character snitches on him to the coach, and you are thrust into the game. After the game, whether good or bad, you garner interest from recruiters. Some time later, Tommy gets released from the team because of his health problem, and you lead the team to the high school championship. Right? So whether good or bad, we proceed to the next year, your senior year. You've been the quarterback. Tommy then returns the following year after getting corrective heart surgery, supposedly again, and he volunteers to be a wide receiver. He asks if you can feed him the ball so he can still possibly get college offers. Keep this in mind as a wide receiver. You fast forward through playing games, feeding Tommy the ball, whatever, to it being time for you to pick a college. And just whatever, basically the virtue of the story, Tommy picks the exact same college as you, no matter what your selection is. However, even though he was supposed to be playing as a wide receiver to get those college offers, the college that you just selected also decides to bring him in as a quarterback. Fast forward, some defensive dick of a coach decides he's going to rotate you two at quarterback in your junior years at this college because reasons. Fast forward some more, and during a game, Tommy suffers another health crisis because of his heart and has to be taken to the hospital. If you win a national championship, you bring him the trophy in his hospital bed. So we've had all this happen up to this point, right? Well, let's do another fast forward, because we're going to fast forward to maybe it's possibly just the next scene where your character is waiting for Tommy to return home from the hospital. By the way, you both have been roommates this whole time. So you're waiting for him to return from the hospital because of his, congenital heart defect, when dick of a coach stops by to tell you that he's actually going to start Billy Ray next year over you because whoever wrote this story probably thinks an acai bowl is some kind of college playoff game. Anyway, you can choose to either leave for the draft or stay and play as a wide receiver or halfback, like Tommy did. Fast forward a fuck ton and you eventually end up at the combine where you get to run the 40-yard dash. And by run, I mean hit quick time events. You also then proceed to do a bunch of drills similar to the kind you did in the first iteration of Long Shot. Again, the Madden folks are the masters of copy and paste. Now, there's more things you do beyond this point. Obviously, you get drafted and there are several story events that occur based on certain choices you make throughout your NFL career. At this point in the mode, I just left because I was so overwhelmed by the absurdity within the story of this game mode. In fact, I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety just recounting this, so let's just move on. Next, we'll look briefly at the yard. It's a 3 versus 3 or 6 versus 6 backyard arcade type game mode in the exclusive simulation football title. If you're someone that enjoyed the NFL Street Series, you probably won't enjoy this. The rules are unnecessarily convoluted, the skills and attributes are a thing, and the gameplay feels like just a slightly more jank Madden than something actually arcadey like NFL Street. The cosmetics are everything from kinda cool, admittedly, to ridiculously over the top, which is fine because, again, arcadey. They're also another brilliant way for EA to sneak more microtransactions into their copy and paste game. If there was a reason to get Madden 21 over sticking with Madden 20 another year, this would be it, simply by virtue of it being something Madden 20 doesn't have. So if you need things, it's another thing, but if you don't need it, just wait for whatever 2K brings. I don't know if what 2K brings will be less slimy, but I'm confident it will at least be more imaginative. On to the next one. Superstar KO is back. It's fairly unchanged. They have new coaches for teams, but that's about it. Really, Superstar KO seemed like that was going to be their arcadey thing, but they then came up with the yard. I actually feel like Superstar KO makes more sense from a gameplay perspective, but that's just me. Here's another case of the pro being that it still exists. Now on to everyone's favorite mode. Of course, Mutt is back and fairly unchanged as well. One of the things that kind of annoys me about this game mode, besides all of it, is that they force you to once again play the tutorials. I understand having them there for people unfamiliar with the mode, but besides that, I feel like there needs to be a better way to just jump into the games. Anyways, that's about it for Mutt. If you dig it, it's there. If you don't, it's there. No one really wins. Madden 21 exemplifies stagnation with incredible clarity and lack of shame. The small improvements made and features added are tossed by the wayside as persisting bugs, glitches, and a nonsensical story mode takes center stage. Everything from the slick marketing to the talked up and vapid game modes, and even how their developers conduct themselves on social media when faced with criticism. Don't worry, Clint, I'm not on Twitter, so you don't have to block me. Shows that business as usual and the prioritization of profits are still very much the edict at EA. As other game franchises like FIFA and NBA have had to reassess their direction, Madden has been able to sail steadfast to its liking, riding the lucrative winds of their anti-consumer exclusive agreement. But people are beginning to realize that no matter how high their masts soar or how loud their engine roars, the wood of their hull is rotten, and they are beginning to take on water. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this, please give it a like and share. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you really dug it, subscribe to the Thoughts and Players YouTube channel. We are a brand new gaming podcast, putting out new episodes every Monday on various podcast services as well as on YouTube. Links and info are in the description.